on. All right. Good morning. What if I told you that the secret to growing a small healthcare company across Europe isn't just about great products, but about hiring and retaining bilingual talent who keeps you competitive? Understanding why a German client expects detailed data while your French partner values relationship first. That is the key. My guest today has cracked this code, her code, leading multicultural teams from Minnesota to Strasbourg in France, helping eye health companies navigate international business successfully. Stay tuned. This conversation will change how you think about global leadership. Good morning, Chris, and thank you for joining me today.
Good morning, Tanja. Thank you for that very very daunting introduction. Like, is that what we do? But yes,
Daunting.
try to do my best to explain. Yeah, to explain what we do. Uh, yeah.
So, Chris, take us back to the beginning. What made you, a Minnesota native, decide to come over and build a global consulting business from
Mm.
Strasbourg, France?
Well, it started with my joining a large global eye care company, Bausch and Lomb, and I was part of a global strategy team
Mhm.
when I joined the company, and that really suited me because it meant working on a global basis with teams in Europe, Asia. And at some point, the company made a reorganizational change, and that global group was eliminated, and I was tucked into the Americas region, and I just went, I really feel like I want to continue working on a global basis. And so I was very lucky that the president to the European region at the time saw the benefit of that and worked out a deal where I was part-time, worked part of the time Europe, part of the time Americas. But for political reasons, that did not go over well. And on the U.S. side, I just as an aside, one of the things that's very funny about working in a global company is, and I've seen this with multiple companies that I've consulted with as well over the years. You walk into a room, you get people from around the globe in there, and you say, "Here's our marketing campaign." It's going to work for everybody. We've done all the focus groups, we've done all the analysis. It's going to work for every region of the world. And immediately the French team, it's always the French team first, will put it up and go, "In France, this will not work." And then the Germans go, "Oh yeah, yeah, don't think so." And the Americans, particularly if it's a non-American lead, will immediately drop out and do their own thing. And you see it time and time again. It is one of the key cultural differences that people do not understand or miss a lot of the times. So that's what happened. They were like, "No, we can't do that." So I got transferred over to the European team, created a job for me as head of originally it was head of communication across their three-part portfolios of surgical, pharmaceutical, and vision care. And I moved over in July 2001 to London, where at that point in time, the European business was headquartered, and stayed at Bausch an additional 6.5, well, total of 6.5 years, and left. It actually is coming up on my 20th anniversary of
Oh,
leaving the
congratulations.
company at the end of November 2005, and left to start my consulting business. The next day, the first phone call was from one of the teams at Bausch hiring me to be a consultant. And I honestly can say that we've continued working consulting with Bausch and Lomb since then, which is great, because you get to work with people you know really well and you've worked together with for a long time. So that was sort of the starting point of building the consulting business. And initially, my plan was to work on my own, do medical writing, do some other types of consulting. But the demand quickly, it's fortunate because the demand grew. And so hired a medical writer who ironically had not finished university, was 19 years old, exceptionally talented, now runs a global communication business for a large company in Berlin. And you know, and it sort of grew from there. And about a year into it, it was clear that there was an unmet need for innovative companies, medical device companies, to bring their technologies to Europe. We got asked a lot to, help us find distributors.
Mhm.
Um, can you run a clinical study for us? Well, I had run phase 4 clinicals at Bausch, so it was easy to add clinicals to that mix. And went in with a business partner to create a broader based company, and that has evolved into today what is called Medevise Consulting, which was founded in April 2021 and is based here in Strasbourg, France. And Medevise focuses on, we're just in the process of launching new branding. So
Uh-huh.
what we say is evidence to access. So we're focused on clinical data, market research, all the things that you need, that evidence that you need to construct a commercial plan and bring your product to Europe. And then we will help companies access the market through to initial execution. And so that's sort of the sort of short story to how it uh, began. I left London in 2010. Well, I split between London and Strasbourg for 2.5 years, and then made the full move in 2012 just because I got really tired of London. And Strasbourg, while initially seeming like a very sleepy place, I've been coming here since 2004, just really, really suited.
Mhm.
And a lot of times people will assume that you work for the Council of Europe, you work for Lilly, because Lilly's EU headquarters are here. There's Merck, Millipore.
Right.
There's a fair number of American companies or the Council of Europe, and it's, different divisions. So it's very unusual to meet somebody who just has a company on their own. And so that always confuses people. And how did you end up here? And, my previous company was based here in London, and I just really fell in love with Strasbourg.
Mm.
And, so it's been 15 years, and that's, it's home now.
Wow. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, so it made a lot of sense to start a company here. Though it's not without its controversies, because the cost base in France is daunting for employing people. The the environment is not conducive to entrepreneurship, especially if you're selling services and not products. But if you know the right people, you can leverage, network and find a good path. But it does, when I first put the board of directors together, there was a lot of pushback about basing in France. But to me, because I've made a commitment to living here, it felt like the right thing to do.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So basically, if I understand correctly, you created a niche because there was a need, and you
Mm.
also decided not to stay in London, but in Strasbourg, and that's fine too. And you got through, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the city motto of Strasbourg, the heart of Europe. And we
Yeah.
are very much central. The joke is that Strasbourg is exceptionally difficult to get to, unless you're coming from Paris. Yeah, and we have good train connections, but not the easiest place in terms of transportation. But there is a remarkable med tech environment here in Strasbourg,
True.
that came out of ERCAD, which is an institute for, um, Professor Jacques Moresco founded it as a center for training on minimally invasive surgical techniques, which grew out of, initially it was very much focused on cancers of the gut, of the gastrointestinal region.
Hmm.
And out of ERCAD grew the ESU, the Institute for Image Guided Minimally Invasive Surgery. The ESUs were created under a program when Sarkozy was president, and he did a big push for entrepreneurship. And you saw a lot of changes that he put in. And so you have, and in that same time period, about 15 years ago, the Strasbourg Eurometropole created NextMed, which the intention was to create a hub, a campus for innovative medtech companies.
Hmm.
And so, because I was already here involved, I knew that NextMed represented a really good opportunity to connect in. And so we became the first company to move into the NextMed building,
Okay.
Explora, on the campus of the public hospital.
Hmm.
And hopefully we'll be staying there and moving to a bigger building next year. But Strasbourg is this hidden gem. And when you talk to people about Strasbourg, potential clients and things like that, and you talk about what we have here, um, they're really, genuinely surprised. And we focus on ophthalmology. And over the past couple years, Professor Tristan Bossier, who's the chair of the Department of Ophthalmology here in Strasbourg, he has been working with a charity called Help Me See. And together they've created a European training center using virtual reality surgical systems, which were developed here in Strasbourg
Right.
by a company called Encimo.
Right. Hmm.
And, so Strasbourg has a very early, tied to virtual reality simulators for
Hmm.
surgical training. And so in our building, we have a surgical, training platform, wet labs, et cetera, companies from all over Europe come and bring their people in. So it's a remarkable place to be located and based. Plus, the quality of life is something that you really can't argue with.
True, true. So you've got this, pole of brain power,
Mm,
but and this brain power is also very multicultural. So you must manage multicultural teams across time zones. What is like, and you mentioned this a little bit before in the marketing, how we do marketing here or there. What's
mm.
the biggest myth about leading global teams that you'd like to break?
Well, first of all, I have to acknowledge that one of the reasons that Strasbourg works really well for creating a global team is Strasbourg is inherently multicultural because of the Council of Europe as well as the University of Strasbourg, which is one of
Mm,
the leading international scientific universities. And so it brings people from all over the world.
right.
And so I would say that of the Strasbourg-based team, 80% of them come out of the University of Strasbourg.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it is a very, very high recruitment rate because we look for scientific PhDs
Hmm.
because they're going to be able to um, understand the requirements around the technologies and things like that. Like when we have as a material scientist, we have a biologist, we have this chemist, we have this whole range of people. The other thing that has helped us a lot in that recruitment is the MS, the European Business School here in Strasbourg, and they started a program also about 15 years ago for PhDs who um, wanted to do a master's program. So it's a master's in um, entrepreneurship, innovation. And so I very early on when people started to pick up on these because they would be looking for internships and companies started to fight over them, and every year there's a real big scramble to get interns from that program
Hmm.
because they're going to be high quality. And so we have 7 of those folks on our team.
Hmm.
And, they're not just, we have Italian, we have French, we have Lebanese, um, French Algerian, Spanish. Yeah. So just pulling from the University of Strasbourg gives us, multiple nationalities.
Oh, what a
And
rich bouquet of cultures and
yeah,
language.
I mean, I think we have 13 nationalities
Wow.
at this point in time. So, um, but there are some, there's certain things you must speak English very well.
Hmm.
And French is also really important.
Hmm.
And because those are the 2 common languages of the company. And then after that, we joke that one of the questions we ask when we're recruiting is, what languages do you speak? Because we're like, okay, we need that language, tick. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, we're able to, provide, native speakers in German, English, Italian, Spanish, Romanian, Arabic. I know I'm missing some Portuguese. So
Wow.
it's very cool, and sometimes comical, because of cultural
So,
differences and things.
okay. Can you
Yeah.
talk about it like a communication example that you may come to mind?
No, it's more about, like, use of words and things like that
Okay.
that happens a lot. And somebody will go, well, what does that word mean? And one person might say, well, it means this. Another person might say it means that. And you realize that words, similar words have different meanings in different languages.
Right.
I years ago, I remember I had a marketing person who, um, she sent me a campaign, and she said, the artist did it. It was very sober. Now, in English, sober means you're not drunk. In
Right.
French, sober means quite serious and understated.
Right. Right.
And that's that's one of the tricks that you have to learn and accept.
Hmm.
And I think the biggest challenge is remembering that everybody's perspective is going to be a little bit different based on their background and their culture.
Hmm.
And you really have to work to that. Yeah, and I think that's something that people miss. When I moved over from the US to London, I, made that usual American mistake of, oh, it's the same language. They're going to understand what I'm saying. It's not the same language. British English is very different from American English. British behavior is very different from American behavior.
Mm.
And you'll see it every now and floating around, this meme that talks about what a British person says and what an American person hears. A British person will go, well, I'll take that into consideration.
Mm.
What the American goes, oh, they really like it. What the British person means is, yeah, no.
The opposite.
Yeah. And over and over again. And it's the same with French, like you said at the beginning, French people value relationship. And so if they don't know you, they're probably not, especially in a business environment, if they don't know you, they're not necessarily going to be warm and friendly. They're going to be cautious.
Right.
They're going to hold back. You have to break down the walls. You have to, figure out what makes him or her tick,
Hmm.
and understand that. And Germans are very political. There's a hierarchy.
Hmm.
So there's all these things that you have to understand that informs how that person is going to behave and is going to react to a company's work environment. Now,
Hmm.
I'm lucky because I for many years I did intercultural training, um, as a way of helping people present in English more confidently and things like that. So yeah, but I got beat up a lot in the beginning. I did. I did. I got all the time. I was getting called into my boss's office. Well, so and so says you did this, and I went,
Did
I
I?
just I just asked, and so it's not easy. But if you go in with an open mind, and you're listening, to what other truly listening to what people are telling you, you'll learn. But yeah,
Mhm.
there's, like right now, August in France is anybody home?
Exactly.
And one of our team based in the US is saying, well, nothing's moving. No Europeans are responding. I went, it's the third week of August. Nobody's working.
Exactly.
Next week,
Right.
things will start picking up. And yeah, things are picking up. Yep, doctors start to respond this week. So it's
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a great insight when you're talking about hiring and addressing the fact that even though we speak English, that the cultural blind side is right there. And so
Mm,
if you're not if you don't have that global perspective and open-mindedness that a word may mean different things in different cultures, you may be misled very quickly and judge,
Yeah.
which is normal. What would be, some you probably hire, trying to find, assess the right people? Do you go more for a cultural fit? Do you go more for the knowledge fit? What are some best practices that you use when you're in recruitment and hiring?
Well, I need to put a caveat that we don't do a lot of recruitment
Okay.
out, like open recruitment. We tend to prefer to do word of mouth.
All right.
So typically when somebody joins the company, we will ask, do you know anybody who is looking for work, wants to, would be open to talking to us? And we'll get CVs on file that way. And
All
so we
right.
usually have a few people who are waiting to join us. We'll
Mhm.
pre-interview and things like that. But we know that the person that we've hired meets the what we're looking for.
Right.
And so we're hopeful that they're going to work out. And I know some of the teams listening right now are watching this. So there's a certain level of faith, this leap of faith when you hire.
Right.
And I have gone through hiring processes where, I've literally had 10 people interview somebody and, we're all like, yes, this is the person. It's going to be great. And it was the biggest hiring mistake of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you just have to trust your gut
Mm-hmm.
about, when you're talking to somebody in recruiting and sometimes you just have to accept the fact that you may get it wrong. And
Right.
and and one of our board members says companies tend to be too quick to hire and too fast to and too quick to hire and too slow to fire.
Mm-hmm.
And as hard as uncomfortable it is, you have to recognize as quickly as possible if somebody's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we're aside from that skill set that we want, which is that scientific background knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
after that it's team cohesion.
Right.
Because we say this all the time. We are so fortunate because we have a team that genuinely likes each other and gets along and spends
Great.
time together and wants to very supportive of each other. And so you have to be really careful that any kind of outlier from that is addressed really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And because you don't want to screw up your cohesion. You don't want to screw up that joie de vivre, as we say in French, that works, works for your company.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the biggest tricks. I think the other thing is to be really, really open and transparent with people about what you're doing for recruiting, who you're looking for, why are you making this move in the company? What's it going to do to impact the rest of the team? Because at this point, we're about 30 people across Strasbourg and the other UK, Italy, and US.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an equilibrium there
Mm-hmm.
that you want to keep in balance.
Mm-hmm.
And that I'm always, always mindful of that. And I know our head of HR is as well, that you're looking, it is that your gut, your spidey sense, however you want to call it, that also has to guide you on that hiring process.
Mm-hmm. Very sound advice for small companies and leaders who want to scale and grow internationally. How about what advice would you give to someone who's bilingual or third culture kids who are going out there and are new to the job, or maybe in maybe not new, maybe just to what do you call it? One, two, three, changing from job to job. What are some advice
Mm,
that you could give them who are probably listening to this and saying, well, how do I do this? Maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow, Medevise maybe
Yeah.
hire or a similar structure. What is some advice you'd give them?
Well, one, Strasbourg is a fantastic place if you're multilingual, because every company, it's really a requirement now, especially in medtech, because most of the companies that are located in NextMed in Strasbourg have an international global ambition. And so having multilingual people, and it's really interesting because NextMed, um, just our quality manager, who's also one of my neighbors, when they moved here, they moved because her husband works for a division of the council, and they moved from Spain. And I noticed that she wasn't working, and talked to her one day, and her impression was, well, I can't get a job because I don't speak, my French isn't very good.
Mhm.
And the really funny thing about NextMed, and the companies there, is that it doesn't matter. If you've got a good skill set and you speak English and you're, willing to try at the French part, there's a place. And so I think, especially because we do get a lot of, we have somebody who's finishing up an internship right now who is in a master's program and couldn't find a place. And so we offered him a place because his French wasn't perfect. So my point is that don't be afraid to, knock on doors, to network, as you talk about, Tanja, to, put yourself out there and ask people for interviews, ask to meet people. Um, use whatever connection you have to, creak open the door, to stick your foot in the door, and start to, grow your knowledge. Because I can tell you personally, what I what will turn off a prospective employer more than anything is somebody who doesn't come in and show knowledge about the company and the product area the company works in, and how your skills can be beneficial. Show your value. Um, and if you're, on the younger side, just coming out of, university, or still in university, look for work, look for opportunities to be, speaking, using both of your languages. Um, I'm always surprised at the number of people I meet in Strasbourg who also speak English or German. And it's, but they're very shy about it because they're not practicing. Find ways to practice, even if it's just, talking to your mother who doesn't understand a word you're saying. Practice it, practice your language skills.
Mhm. Mhm. Very sound advice is to grow the knowledge and network some more, and
Mm,
don't be too shy, because when you're shy, you pretty much stay invisible, and when you're invisible, you're not visible basically where you need to be.
yeah,
Wow,
absolutely.
that's really some great advice. So, Chris, what's the next move for Medevise? Any exciting international projects, and where can we find you? I know you have a podcast, right?
Yeah, so I guess the next big thing on the 1st of September, so sometime next week, we will be officially launching our new branding,
Okay.
as the company heads into year 5. We decided it was time to, come up with a fresh new look. So I'm very excited about that.
Mhm.
Our new chief business officer, Sasha Berger, and our associate director of Medcom, Melly Treve, have been leading that.
Mhm.
Um, and brand new website, etc. The podcast is Oracles of Eye Innovation, and it's something that grew out of COVID. And during COVID, one of the members of our board is shareholder in a company, Michael Moroccan, who's a very well-known scientist and entrepreneur in ophthalmology. His wife and I, we were bored. And so we said, let's start a webinar, because nobody was doing webinars. This is back, April 2020, and nobody had really figured out
Mhm.
what to do with your time. And so we thought, we know a lot of people. Let's start a live webinar. Let's invite people we think have cool stuff and start talking. And that's what we did. And, as more and more webinars came online, we kind of faded it out. But as we were working on the new branding for the company, I decided to bring back Oracle's, one, because the name is fun, but two, to have conversations with people about innovation
Mm,
and their path that brought them to developing an innovation and their path of entrepreneurship.
mm. Oh,
Because over the years, you learn that um, entrepreneurship, people who enter entrepreneurship come from many different places. It's not that you get an undergraduate degree in business, you do an MBA, and then you become an entrepreneur.
yeah, it's not linear.
No, it's not. It's really not linear. And so it's super fun. The first one that was released earlier this month was with Jean-Pierre Hubschman, who's French and is now based in California, and he has started a robotics company.
Oh,
Yeah. And next up, we just recorded it last week, is the CEO of a company that does develop cells for
mhm.
cellular therapy.
Oh, interesting.
And very, very interesting, completely over my head, but it seems that cellular therapy has the potential to leapfrog some of the genetic therapies because gene therapy is so specific to the type of disease
Mm,
or the problem, whereas cellular therapy is a little bit more of a broad blanket approach that's quite seems to be quite effective. So that'll be released hopefully next week. Then another one is an ophthalmologist who is a serial entrepreneur, and he starts companies, raises the first money, gets them up on their feet, puts in an executive team, and then he steps out. And so we're going to be talking with him and the CEO of one of his latest companies that just raised $42 million last week. So we're going to talk to the two of them about that path and that journey. So
interesting.
yeah. And I'm really excited about doing it again and getting to share with people the excitement that we feel about innovation,
Hmm.
because it is, yeah, it is what Medevise does.
Okay.
So I think that that's the next big, that's the next big thing is the branding. We're always working on new clients, new projects. We're about to, I can't say specifically because the contract's not signed and they're a publicly traded company. We're about to uh, launch a very big clinical project for a company that's been under development for about 5, 6 months now.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of neat things that is keeping us all busy.
Okay. Wow. Exciting. Exciting. So you're on LinkedIn, correct?
I am on LinkedIn. I think it's Chris Morrill.
I'll make
Uh,
sure to provide all the
yeah,
information
yeah,
in the
do that.
caption.
Yeah, and then Med Device Consulting.
All right.
Send us a message. People, yeah, the team monitors the inbox very closely. We're always happy to hear from people, get CVs. If you think you can, have the right blend of skills, happy to hear from people, and yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Well, this has been a very interesting and insightful conversation, and I could go on for another half an hour.
I probably could too, but who needs that?
But the last question for someone
Mm,
inspired by your journey, whether they're looking to work abroad or hire globally, what would
mm.
be one little piece of golden nugget advice? Just one little, what would it be?
Ooh, that is an interesting question. Don't let's start with the common mistake, okay? The number of times I've met Americans who just show up in Strasbourg thinking that they're going to find a job, settle down, work, without doing any research whatsoever. And this has happened more than once over the past 10 years. Um, don't be that person. because you will fail. Because especially a city like Strasbourg, you have to have a network. You have to be networked in.
Absolutely.
It is very much a company town here. There's three companies: University, Council of Europe, Lilly, a few other, American companies. But it's a very, what is the joke? It's the world's biggest village.
Exactly.
Everybody knows everybody. So it's a tricky place to navigate. So what the trick is to look for a company that is US based, that has an international presence, and work to get hired from that aspect, and then coming over to Europe, because the UK in particular has really changed its work permit rules.
Right.
And it's very, very hard because right now, especially for an American, they see it as you're taking a job from an able-bodied British person.
Mhm.
And so you have to have a unique skill set. Um, Finding the right company in the US will overcome a lot of those obstacles. But, most importantly, do your research. Coming to a foreign country for vacation is not the same as living here. You know that, Tanja. I know that.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard.
Hmm.
It's isolating. It's all these things. And so you have to expect that. But once you get to some place, if you are American, join the American group.
Hmm.
If you are from another country, but you want to practice your English, there's always an English speaking group in most cities. Look for ways that you can start to build your network,
Hmm.
because that will make all the difference in the world.
Thank you, Chris. Thank
Mm.
you for sharing these fabulous insights on navigating the beautiful complexity of global business from Strasbourg, France. And to our
You're welcome.
listeners, you've just heard from someone who's turned cultural intelligence into competitive edge, and it is possible. If you found value in today's conversation, connect with Chris. All the information is in the caption. And thank you for joining us on TP Talks Working Global. I hope you've discovered at least one golden nugget to guide your own international journey today. Keep following for the stories that illuminate life and careers across cultures. Until next time, as Casey Kasem used to say, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Thank you very much, Chris, for joining me,
Thank you
and
for
have a
having me.